Hello everyone, this is a lesson in 2-5-1 sequences. The first part of the video is going to be explaining really what a 2-5-1 sequence is, and the second part is just going to be showing you a simple but nice way to play 2-5-1 sequences on the piano. So if you're just starting out with jazz piano, you've probably heard about 2-5-1s. And you won't get very far in jazz without hearing about them, simply because so much of jazz is comprised of 2-5-1 sequences that it's really essential to kind of get a basic understanding of them. So firstly, what is a 2-5-1 sequence? Well, quite simply, it's just the second chord in a scale, the fifth chord in a scale, and the first chord in a scale. So if we look at the C major scale, if we build a chord off the second note, which is D, and we play every other note of the C major scale, which is just basically every other white key in this case, that gives you what you would call the 2 chord, or the second chord of C major, which in this case is a D minor 7. The 2 chord is always a minor 7 chord. If we build a chord off the fifth note of the scale, which is G, and we play every other note of the C major scale, that gives us a G dominant 7, or it's also called a G7. If you see that notation as just 7, it means a dominant 7. So the 5 chord is always a dominant 7. And then if we build a chord off the first note in the scale, which is C, and again every other note of the C major scale, that gives us a C major 7. So the 1 chord, or the first chord in the scale, is always a major 7 chord. So that's D minor 7, G7 or G dominant 7, and C major 7. And that is a 2-5-1 sequence. So we'll look at that in another key now. So let's look at it in F major. Okay, so our 2 chord will start on the second note of the F major scale, which is a G. And now we're going to play every other note of the F major scale. So you can just sort of walk up the notes of the scale to help you do this. Okay, so we skip 1, and then that gives us B flat, and D, and F. And that gives us G minor 7. We do the same thing starting from the fifth note of the scale. That gives us a C7, or C dominant 7. And then we build a chord off the first note of the scale, and that gives us F major 7. So G minor 7, C7 or C dominant 7, and F major 7. And that's a 2-5-1 in the key of F major. Now, if you've ever watched jazz pianists play or listened to jazz pianists, you will never see them play a 2-5-1 like this. There's nothing wrong with this, it's perfectly correct, but it doesn't sound very graceful or smooth. All this moving around is a bit jarring. You'll tend to hear things more like this. Okay, now that's a 2-5-1 sequence with some added notes in there for colour, but the important thing is that it sounds a lot smoother because we're not moving around as much. There's very little movement, which gives us a much smoother sound. So what I'm going to show you now is a smooth sounding 2-5-1 simply using 3 notes spread across the 2 hands. Okay, so what's going to be useful to do before doing this is to, when you play one of these chords, so say a D minor 7, is to pick out the 3rd and the 7th in that chord. So this is the root, this is the 3rd, this is the 5th, and this is the 7th. So we want to pick out just the 3rd and the 7th, and then we're going to play the root note down in our left hand, like this. Okay? And you can hear it sounds, it's a much more open sound, it's a bit more elegant. Okay? We don't actually need the 5th to still hear a D minor 7. I'm not going to go into the reasons why you don't need the 5th in this video, but just the root and the 3rd and the 7th is enough to imply a D minor 7. Okay, so a good exercise to do before doing this is with each chord just picking out the 3rd and the 7th. Okay, we'll do that again with the G7. So we've got root, 3rd, 5th and 7th. So we want to pick out the 3rd and the 7th. And you can, as you practice chords, it's a good exercise just to kind of, yeah, like so, okay, that's the 3rd, that's the 7th. So root in our left hand and the 3rd and 7th in our right hand, like this. Okay, now that's our D minor 7. Now we're going to move to the G7 now, and so we're going to switch our left hand down to a G. Now all we need to do is move the 7th of the D minor 7 down 1 semitone, and you'll see that actually then gives us the 3rd and the 7th of the G7. So this movement here, and you can know how smooth it sounds compared to this, and it's because we're just not moving very far on the piano. Okay, so the 7th just drops down 1 semitone and it becomes the 3rd of the next chord. Okay, and then we can do the same, moving from the G7 to the C major 7. So we'll switch our left hand to a C, and now this was the 7th of the G7, the F, and we're just going to move that down 1 semitone, and then that becomes the 3rd and the 7th of the C major 7. So starting again with our D minor 7, 3rd and 7th, the 7th drops down 1 semitone, left hand changes to the root note of the next chord, and now that's our 3rd and 7th of the G7, and then we move the 7th down 1 semitone and we change our left hand to a C, and that gives us a C major 7. So we've gone from this to this, which is a much more elegant and smoother sound. So I hope that's been helpful for someone. Feel free to leave any feedback or questions if anything didn't make sense in the comments, and thanks very much for watching.